Hi, in this video I'm going to demonstrate some more convoluted and complex paths that you would more realistically encounter whenever you are trying to work on a Linux-based operating system, especially via the command line where you're having to kind of manually type in paths and move things via commands as opposed to a user interface. Now, I am going to visualize this using the EduPod, which has like this lovely feature of going through the RStudio IDE, which has the ability to operate on the terminal of the computer that it's running on, which is a remote Linux-based operating system. All that's context because the nice thing about RStudio is it contains like a file visualizer that I can put over here and like point towards. But in the end, like when I am coding this in real life, I'm usually using a dedicated SSH client, so something that lets me type in commands and send it to a server. And that won't always have this type of viewer. That said, I do prefer MOBA Xterm, which includes a viewer like this, because it's a handy tool to have. But let's start exploring this concept. To start off with, I'm just going to create a bunch of directories for us to explore so that we have something to actually write. This code right here should all be included inside of the description to this video. And one thing to note is I've written it to be kind of portable, so it uses a tilde, and then once it's created a directory, and then so this is the making the directory, this is changing directory. Once it's changed into that directory, it starts to use from the current position do a bunch of stuff. So just make sure you run this in order. Otherwise, if you're starting in your home directory, you'll accidentally make all of these files inside of it, and that's when stuff will get a little bit weird, and your examples won't look like mine. So I'm going to delete that real quick, and then demonstrate creating it. So I'm just going to run it line by line. This will make the directory. It's giving me an error message saying that file already exists because it's right there. I've already run this before. So let me delete that. It's going to, I saved that file in there, so I'll have to make the directory first. If I make that directory now, it will run. I'm going to save my file now because I had that file stored in that directory. So there we go. Now that file's in there. I pressed Control S. You didn't see that. Now I'm going to run the change directory, which this is not my working directory. This is a separate program actually that's running to deliver like data to RStudio, telling it what the path stuff is. This is my terminal, and when I say change directory, I'm talking about the reference point for the terminal, so where it currently is. So when I do that, notice how the tilde in front of my $sign changes. All right, now it says my current path, starting with the tilde and then ending in my current directory. If I type in print working directory or pwd, I can see the full path to my working directory. Going through here, this one line of code will make a directory in my current directory. That's what this dot means. So from the current directory, go inside and create a directory called dir1. Then go inside and create a directory called dir11. And go inside and create a third directory. So 3 levels deep, create one d111. And then I do that kind of process several times to create like a series of different directories for us to explore. Please note that there is this -p. That is an argument that is a switch type argument that activates parent creation mode. And so that means it won't just create the most recent one, because if I take that out, I get an error message saying, I can't do that. This all doesn't exist. How could I create that? Well, the answer is, well, first create this one. That's a parent, like the grandparent. Then create the parent, and then finally create the last directory. So create parents. All right, so I'm going to run those. I'm then going to, inside of dir1, so from the current position, which is currently pathDemo, So from pathDemo, go into dir1, then go into dir11, and create a file called test.zip by downloading from this WordPress website. So I can run that. There it is. It downloaded 23 megabytes. I then have it change into dir1. So again, this is not my current directory. This is just a common source of confusion. This is just a visualization. This is my current directory. So from this location, so if I try this down here, cd, dir1 is an option. If I go to cd and I press tab, the only option from pathDemo is dir1 to change directory. And so it suggests that as an option. That's as deep as I currently want to go because my next line of code is going to be assuming I'm in just dir1. And so I'm going to stop there. I could have put in from the current directory, but you'll see that when it suggested code, it left it out because it turns out that // is often optional. I've been stressing it because I like to put from the current position. I think that helps me understand my code better. It indicates to me that I'm going inside of a directory, but it's not necessary if you kind of rule out the different options, that makes sense from the server's point of view. Whatever. This is all a little bit more detailed than you need to know. Just know it's often optional, I will say, for calling programs. So if this was the name of a program, I would need to add a path to it unless it was in my variable capital P, capital A, capital T, capital H, which they named horribly because it's also called the path. But that's the program path, and that's part of your homework. So I won't go into that. Don't worry about that so much. Focus on if you need a path, // is an option. It's from the current directory. Okay, so let's change into that directory. I'm going to demonstrate again. cd space tab is going to autocomplete to the only directory it has the option of. I could have typed it in though. When I do that, I can see that my current directory, like help tool, has updated, and so I now know that I am currently in this location. Well, I wanted to demonstrate how we could kind of modify the path in order to navigate to that file. So the test zip is not in this location. I could prove that. I could type in ls and show, hey, it's not in this location. If I list the files that are in dir1.1, however, I can see that it is in that location. I will point out, I've left out certain symbols that you're associating with directories because, again, just the server is smart enough to know someone's programmed this in that it's still able to interpret what I mean. I mean, list out the contents of dir1_1. This is just part of the art of working with these systems, kind of just knowing those from experience that will work. Okay, so I want to unzip that file. There's a program that helps you unzip things. It's called unzip. It just needs to get access to that file. So I am going to, from this location, I'm going to go into dir1. I'm going to press tab just to demonstrate what happens. Since I had two options though, it's not finishing. You can't hear it probably, but there's a little a bell sound is what it's called. But if I press it twice, it actually produces the options. So right now it's telling me that, okay, cool, dir1_something exists, but there's multiple options. Which one do I want? I need to be more specific. So at this point, I want the 1. And now I'm going to press tab because I really want to encourage y'all to try learning to use tab. I do have to point out it only works in this bottom section for bash. Once we get up into R, it will work in this top section as well, but there you go. When I press tab, it auto-completed the /, and if I press tab again, it's listing out the files in this directory. Well, test.zip is the one I want, so if I type in T, and then I press tab once again, that's the only possible option, and so it auto-completes the rest for me. At this point, I can press enter and it will do the unzipping. There's a lot more of that to unzip than I remembered. But because this was occurring in my current directory, it unzipped to my current directory. So we can see that it actually created this directory here. And this has all that stuff in it. Finally, my setup script had this ... at the beginning, which ... stands for go to the previous directory. And so when I ran it, notice what happened. So cd ... I could have done cd ... // it just produces the same effect. So let's start exploring some of this. To start off with, though, I want to get back to the directory you would have been if you had just followed my setup code. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go cd into the pathDemo. I could do from my home directory, but since I'm already in my home directory, I can also just say from the current directory. Finally, I could also just say from change it to pathDemo without saying from the, because again, it just kind of assumes I meant from the current position. Okay, so now I'm back to where y'all would have been. I can run print working directory to show what that path looks like. Yours will look slightly different. If you're on the EduPod, then it will look very similar to this, but with a different username. That tilde stands in for all of this, and then I've just added pathDemo to it. Okay, so first up, I have line 17, which I'm pretty proud of because I think it helps demonstrate certain behaviors. So I want you to read through that. Here, let me navigate. You can check your work against my image. Okay. So read through this, predict what you think will happen. I will pause. You can pause the video. Pausing, 3, 2, 1. All right, let's go through it. It says from the current directory, which is pathDemo, change into dir1. Then go up one directory. Okay. Then change into dir1. Okay. And then go up one. Cool. So if I run this, nothing changed. It did change, it just changed it so fast we can't view it, or maybe that's not how the program works, I don't know. But it changed into it, it went back, it went into it, and it went back, resulting in the same place. Obviously, you wouldn't actually do this in real life, but it demonstrates what's happening with these paths and how these things can be strung together. What I want to point out is that this is an example of a relative file path. We could make this an absolute file path that contains all or most of these characters. So I could have said, change directory from the home directory into pathDemo. So what I've done so far is I've just replaced all of that with what I had originally started with. And now I've rewritten it as an absolute file path. It starts at a defined starting point. Although I always like to talk about how tilde is it really absolute? It changes from person to person, but within a user profile it is defined. It's, for me, this full path right here before that last // but for you it's slightly different. So is it fully absolute? I don't know, it's just a terminology thing. It's kind of fun though. All right, so it's going to change into this dir1, and then it's going to go up, and then it's going to go back into dir1, and then it's going to go back up. Am I sure what's going to happen? No, but let's find out. Okay, that worked. It didn't at least produce an error. And so what it did is it did that same path, but it started, instead of from the current directory, it started from this absolute point. So yes, I've said in the past that the ... is typically, well, I've said it is a relative file path symbol. And it is relative, but it can be used in conjunction with the defined file path. That all said, why would you? If I had already defined this, then it would be absolutely no different to say this. On the other hand, this one is going to be simplified to whatever the current directory is. So the contents of it being relative is a little bit tricky at times, but that's not really the key. The key step is you understand that this means current, this means up one, this means home directory, and it's an example of an absolute file path. Finally, I can set the exact same thing by doing it all the way from the / directory of the computer system. Sorry, I forgot for a second that I cannot press copy via Control-C on this computer, because Control-C in the terminal means to close the program. So there we go. That also worked. Notice my path has not changed this whole time. All right, what I want to now demonstrate is a challenge. So here is the challenge to you. Open up the head of dir1 WordPress. Let's find a text file. The wp-settings.php. I think that should be a text file if I remember what those PHP files look like. So open up the head of wp-settings.php from the uncompressed file. All right, so I'm going to, I can't pause the recording on this one, so I'm just going to do it. So I'm going to give you 3 seconds to pause the video. 3, 2, 1. All right, let's work through it. So I'm going to write it from maybe my current directory using the program head. So I'm going to open up head. That's the program. I'm going to type in / because I like to show from the current directory, although it is not necessary. I'm actually going to copy and paste this down here because down here I can get autocomplete, and that might help me out with my coding. So I'm going to come down here, I'm going to press tab now, and if I press it twice, it's going to list my options. So dir1 is where I want to go. Let me visualize what I'm doing using this little sidebar. So now I'm here. Again, I'm going to press tab to just demonstrate how I, Nolan, typically interact with all this. Tab, tab, and I can see my options. WordPress is one of those options. So I'm going to go type in WO and press tab, and it auto-completes the rest. Now this time when I press tab, tab, it's going to be a lot of options, so just be wary. All right, it says more, and unfortunately, you just kind of get stuck in this. I'm going to press enter until I get to the end, and my original code pops back up. At this point, I'm going to start limiting the options too, so I don't have to go through so many. I'm going to type in W and press tab. Okay, so WP- auto-completed. All right, so that's still a lot, so let's get a little bit more specific. Oops, I did this, I do that all the time. I pressed enter too many times, causing no such file or directory to be open because, yeah, I hadn't finished the name of the file. The behavior I just did, though, is I pressed up on the keyboard, going through my previous history and pulling up what I had just typed. And so I can kind of start off where I left off. Okay, so I know it's wp-settings. So I'm going to type in S and try pressing tab because maybe I don't trust myself to type out settings. Oh, not the only option with S, but it's only one of two. So I press tab twice and I can see these two possible options. So finally, this E makes it fully unique, and so when I press tab, it should complete, and so it has. I then pressed enter, and I can see the top of that heading. So that's it. I know it's a lot of time demonstrated, but in essence, once you learn to do this, it goes really quickly. So let me just do it in a little bit more of a realistic speed, and you can see how I kind of operate. Please note you're not going to hear me press tab, so I'm going to be weird and just shout the word tab every time I press tab. Hopefully, I'll try to remember. So I'm going to type in head, and I'm like, I don't remember what's all in this file. Cool, dir1, tab, tab. What's in this one? Tab, tab. Okay, yeah, WordPress, tab. I'm not going to press tab, tab again because I already know it's kind of big, but I do think WP-S is what I'm looking for. Ah, there it is. Settings, tab, done. Very common, very frequently how I explore these servers. Once I've done that, I can copy this. Oh, I can copy this into my source pane to make sure I've documented and saved my efforts. So let's do one more, and that'll be the end of the video. What I want to do is move that file into dir1 itself. So move the into the dir1 directory. Actually, let's move it into the, instead of dir1, dir1_2 directory. So we can play with some of those other directories that I ended up creating for no particular reason, directory. Cool. So pause for 3 seconds. You can go do that. So 3, 2, 1. Let's demonstrate. So the move function is mv. It also allows you to rename files because of, I don't know, history. But the first step will be to access that file. So I could go through all the tabs, but we've already done it a few times now. So I'm just going to copy and paste because I was smart and I documented my efforts as I went. So I'm going to copy that, come down here, paste that. The first argument that you pass to move is the file that you want to move. The second argument is where you want it to move to. If you give it a new name, you can rename it as well. So dir1 is where I want to go. But instead of, and I'm going to press tab, instead of dir11 or wordpress again, I'm going to move it to dir1. Oh, not unique. So tab. Okay, since I started typing dir1, I now have two options: dir1, 1, and dir1, 2. I want to set it to 2. This would actually be sufficient. This would move the file into that location. I'm going to demonstrate, though, it can also be used to rename. Okay. Nothing gets printed. It's a feature. It's a property of Bash. It typically doesn't repeat stuff. I guess that's just a property of Unix type interactions in general. It often doesn't just say succeeded. But we can check. So I can list out the files in that location and see if it succeeded. So if I go back, dir1, dir1, 2, and list the files, we can see that these directories exist in it, and there is the renamed file. And if I try to, well, first of all, let me save my work before I move on. Copy, paste. Oh, wrong place. There we are. And then check if it worked. Worked is what I typed. No, my copy didn't work because I pressed the hotkey. I'm bad about that. There we go. When I run that, I can see that it is in there. And I can see that is the original gone. Well, if I try to call this head again, cannot find it. Well, the file got moved and it got renamed, so it really doesn't exist anymore. It's now that data is located under a different file name. And yeah. So I think I'm going to call this video at that point. I do hope that helps. I will upload this text as a description to the video. So thanks.